Good evening, everyone. Welcome at Yallah Talk, your podcast dedicated to geopolitics and world news. I am Hafid Boutaleb talking to you from Casablanca in Morocco. And tonight we're going to discuss this Gen Z phenomenon, the Gen Z demonstrations that swept the world since last year, and their impact on global geopolitics and the balance of powers, and what's next and how it started. To answer all these questions, tonight I have with me on the studio Rasheq Rahman. Rasheq, welcome with us. You are
Thank you.
political leader of Bangladesh. You have a first-hand experience with the Gen Z demonstrations that has struck Bangladesh last year, and you have valuable insights tonight to share from your experience there as member of the Awami League, the party of the independence of Bangladesh, but also the party that was in charge up until 24 before being ousted by these Gen Z demonstrations. And also from Washington, Calvin Dark, your global affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us, Calvin. You're going to tell us about the temperature in Washington on the brink of these demonstrations that are going to sweep America, I would say, demonstrations expected all across America from small towns to big cities to denounce the rule of Donald Trump that is president now since almost 1 year for his second term. And before talking to you, Calvin, and before you give us some information about the situation and the context on the brink of this hot day that all America is expecting, we are starting with you, Rahman. Rahman, thank you
Thank you.
for having accepted this invitation. And you have a very interesting experience. I don't know if uh, uh, in many studios uh, we have guests such as you who have first-hand experience with revolution, who can witness what front leaders of his own political party did and tell us the feedback, the best feedback, so for other leaders to avoid these mistakes. Thank you very much, Rahman. How are you? How is the
I'm doing
political leadership of the Awami League? How is the Bangladesh today? And what's next? What people say 1 year after the Gen Z upheaval in Bangladesh?
First of all, I'm doing great. As an optimistic person, I have to say I'm doing great. However, I'm displaced, and to somewhat extent, you can say that I am seeking refuge in a country which is not my country for very compelling reasons, as you already mentioned, that there was a revolution led by the Gen Z in our country.
Yeah.
And there was overwhelming violence for which our party leadership, and of course, I'm not detached from that. We all have to evac the country. However, I believe that we must find positivity in everything that happens. And I hope to go back to Bangladesh soon enough, as soon as this unstable, volatile situation comes down and people find a true direction towards something better. And I'm sure you would agree that people resort to the ways of revolution by actually having a hitherto dream that perhaps they are not getting what they're entitled to, what they should get. So, in most of the cases, after the revolution takes place, we must assess whether the revolution was for the right causes and was it enough to suffice the dreams and aspirations of those people who have participated in that revolution. However, before getting into Bangladesh, I would like to address your question from a reverse order. I strongly believe that the world, the status of the state that it is now in, a leader like Donald Trump is very much necessary because being a citizen of Bangladesh, being a part of Asia, we have witnessed that during the Biden administration, due to certain, I would say, whimsical decision, ad hoc decisions, the entire world economy was affected badly. And honestly speaking, these Gen Z revolutions that you are seeing, surely there may be jurisprudence and reasons behind that, but also the instability that was caused during Biden administration worldwide has a role to play as well. So I would think that Mr. Donald Trump, as the President of the United States of America, should continue. And I see that as far as inflation is concerned, he's trying to make wonders happen. And we see some good effect, which is affecting the whole world. A lot of things are becoming stabilized. And also for a country like Bangladesh, now the dollar price is stabilized because of Mr. Donald Trump. That's a very important thing because our 90% of trade takes place in dollar denomination. Okay. And also his peace efforts, many people may not agree with him, but it is working. And honestly speaking, in his previous term, when he became the president for the first time, I must reiterate on the fact that during COVID time, he was the one and only president who could break the syndicate of big pharmaceuticals. If not so, then we would not, I believe, we would not get the vaccine of COVID so fast, and we
Okay.
would not get so many participants manufacturing
Yeah.
COVID vaccine. Also, during his tenure, no new war was initiated. Rather, a
Yeah.
lot of conflicting situations he
Okay.
tried to
Rah-
mitigate.
Okay,
And he's
Rahman.
trying to do the same thing even now.
Okay, Rahman. You precise. I can tell you you're doing well. I can see it from here, and that's good that you precised that you live in exile. You are an exiled
Yeah, because
Bangladeshi, and
because they burned my houses.
yeah,
Not only that, they have filed false cases, more than a dozen, and just to persecute me, just to put me in
so
incarceration.
you are now
And
the object of a persecution because you are a member of
absolutely,
the Wami League.
absolutely,
And
yes.
from here, just to come back to the topic, which is these demonstrations about the Gen Z, for you, these Gen Z have been appropriated or hijacked
Well,
by other political trends. But before getting back to you, Rahman, just quickly to have an introductory statement from Calvin, and then I get back to you, Calvin, from United States, Washington. Tomorrow, the United States will witness huge demonstrations across the country, across the 50 states, as I saw on the media, to denounce a first 10 months of the rule of the Republicans and Donald Trump. Is this a Gen Z uprising ultimately now arriving to the United States?
Well, no, it's not a Gen Z uprising. But one, just want to address a point. You know, I'm not an economic expert. I think that there is legitimate debate over Donald Trump's policies, first term and second term. But actually, that's not why we're having the protest. Notice this isn't anti-inflation protest or anti-tariff protest or anti the Biden Asia policy protest. It's not about the policy. It's not about the choices. Some of the things that Donald Trump did, if I agree with them or not, may have been great. The protest is the no kings protest. Because I know 100% Donald Trump isn't good for democracy because everything he's done with outside of our democratic system. And that's why the protest is called No Kings. I think that the biggest obstacle that we're seeing here in the United States is not that we have we want a completely different economic policy. Some do, some don't. The thing is that Donald Trump doesn't want to act within our system, and that's not good for our democracy. And I don't think that's good for the world in the long run if we are trying to set an example of a functioning democracy. Because remember, you may have a genius in the economic field, security field, anything, but he doesn't get to run like a king, which is why we're having the No Kings protest tomorrow. I think your question about Gen Z is important because, I want to make clear that I'm not saying that young people in the United States are not active like they are in the rest of the world. I'm saying, because there will be Gen Z participating tomorrow all across the country. I do think that there are some parts of the American context that are a little bit different. And that may be why we don't see the level of protest that are driven by Gen Z. A couple of those things. One is young people in the United States, there's not a uniform political orientation. While most young people support the Democratic Party, Donald Trump got higher youth support as a Republican since 2008. Um, Even though Kamala Harris won young people, Donald Trump won young men, because it wouldn't be correct to say that young people are becoming more and more conservative. It would be correct to say that more and more young men are tending conservative. And so you don't have the same liberal base in the young people. Also, we have what Donald Trump has done since January. I don't know if people outside of America realize that he has tied all federal funding, billions of dollars. Some universities couldn't function without federal funding. He has conditioned it on how they hold protests. And he has deemed anything that is against his administration as against American values. There was a Turkish grad student, I believe, in Atlanta, whose visa was canceled because she wrote an op-ed in the school newspaper criticizing U.S. policy in Israel. And so one of the reasons why you're not seeing a lot of Gen Z protesters is because they're afraid, because they realize, especially if they're here on a visa, but even if they're American, there's pressure from the administration to kick kids out if they're protesting anything seen against this administration. And the third part that I think is important
Yeah.
is unemployment. I was really shocked when I was reading about like the protests in Morocco and then some of the other protests around the world, that the unemployment rate among the youth. While there are frustrations in the United States about youth unemployment, compared to the world, it's really good. Overall employment and unemployment in the U.S. is only 4%. I think among young people, it's 10%, which is big. But like, I think because you're not seeing those drastic 30, 25% unemployment among the youth, that may also be why this isn't a Gen Z-led movement.
Okay, so unemployment explains a little bit, even in the United States, you think?
Yes, because like I said, I'm sure that there is a crisis in the United States about young people finding jobs that support a standard of living in the United States, but it's not at the level that we see in other parts of the world where it's 20, 30%. In America, it's 10%, and overall, it's only 4%, which I think points to how Biden did successfully rescue the U.S. economy from COVID, because
Yes.
he saved us. He saved us. We didn't have the recession that everybody was predicting. So I think that because economic conditions are a lot better in the United States relative to the rest of the world, there isn't that frustration at the same level among young people.
Thank you, Calvin. I should have precise that you are also a member of the political party that is the Democratic Party, and that you have.
I support them. They still don't have my complete official support yet. I'm seeing how they handle
Okay.
tomorrow's protests. Yes.
Yeah, and you're not very leaning toward Donald Trump. I think the audience have easily guessed this. So
Mhm.
before getting back to you, because it's very interesting what you're saying, I want to go back to Rahman, but just a few seconds to precise. I'm broadcasting from Morocco, which is a monarchy. We have a king here, and we are very happy of our king. As you know it, Calvin, you come here often, and you're
Mhm.
intimately in relation with Moroccan authorities due to
Mhm.
your duties and your job. There are no king's protests, of course, in Morocco. We had Gen Z protests. It's also a first-hand
Mhm.
experience that I have, first-hand experience a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago exactly. We were shaken by surprising demonstrations. We couldn't expect such big demonstration. However, let me tell you that it was more spectacular on the media than on the ground. Still, it was very important. It's an important warning, and that's why we are doing this live to understand what's going on. Before getting back to you, Rahman, let me say about the Gen Z, the difference between, because on off before starting, you mentioned the Arab Spring, Rahman, am I right? You said that Arab Spring is always these springs, these revolutions, upheaval, uprising, call them whatever you want. They start with the younger share, I would say, of the society, the younger part of the society. What is the difference now? The difference is that the tools that use these new generation called Gen Z, it's not the same that the one my generation and yours also Gen Y was in the Gen Y. People had this new perception that we can see within the Gen Zs, but using all tools. If you remember the Arab Spring, people were demonstrating on the streets, of course, using some Facebook, but it was also all tools like occupying universities, occupying offices, getting very quickly toward violence and powers were not used to such spectacular uprisings with a massive media coverage. Today, there are new tools. It's almost that, as again, I just stated that it's more spectacular online than in the reality. It's more boiling on the online forums than in the streets. So just giving an example, Discord, everything is happening on Discord. That's a Discord. I discovered this tool just 2 weeks ago. So what is, how it started? Tell us, like you would tell a story. Rasheq Rahman, political leader of Awami League, the former party in power in Bangladesh. You are talking to us. You are in exile. You have a first-hand experience with demonstrations. You suffered from these demonstrators. Tell us like a story, how it started, and when have you started understanding that it was very serious, and what would you have done differently with your hierarchy within the party? Because you said it, you were not happy with the political leaders of your party, how they managed it. What would you have said to these people if you can have a time machine and go back in 2024?
Okay. First of all, you see, it's not about me being from Bangladesh, or it's not about being Kevin from USA or you from being from Morocco. There are monarchy in this world, in few countries still now. There is democracy. There are systems where they call it communism, yet they have resorted to free market economy, such as you can take Vietnam into account, you can take the, it's a
China.
very resourceful, powerful country, China, for sure. The idea is to first to be able to understand what Gen Z is irritated by. We often fail to realize that. You see, with Gen Z, as far as leadership is concerned, the word charisma, charismatic leadership, it has totally changed. That means the classical model of providing leadership or the political rhetoric per se has absolutely changed. You cannot stand in front of the Gen Z and deliver a speech of 60 minutes and then expect that they would remain focused and they would swallow whatever you're telling them. You see, in my country, there is a word, Bengali word, it's a jargon, it's called para. They don't like para. That means they are somehow or the other more focused. And classical leaders often fail to realize that Gen Z, more than the development aspect, that is, more than making bridges, more than making roads, more than making export processing zones, they are more interested in a life or a situation where they have peace. So, as far as Bangladesh is concerned, my analysis, perhaps many of my colleagues will not agree with me, the Gen Z's revolution actually started. The ignition point was in 2018 when these boys and girls came to the streets of Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, demanding,
2018, you said. Sorry, Ahmed.
yes, demanding safe highway, safe road, and safe driving. Because in Bangladesh, every day, hundreds of people die on road accidents due to negligence from the drivers who are driving buses, trucks, even for that matter, private cars like sedan cars. So basically, the Gen Z demanded that the government, that is the Awami League government, my government, would create an environment where the whole road safety net would really become safe and there would be peace. Because at the end of the day, let's say you're in Casablanca and you want to travel to Agadir and there is no bridge. You have to cross a river. We are just making a hypothesis, right?
Yeah,
It's
of
a
course, yeah.
hypothetical situation. So even if you have to take a ferry and it takes 10 hours, it's a bane. It's not a pain, it's a bane, B-A-N-E. It's
Yeah.
a trouble. But for that, you will not resort to revolution. For that, you will not resort to violence. For that, you will not resort to protest. But yes, you will express your displeasure that it takes 10 hours, correct? So now, let's say the government comes and makes a highway, makes a bridge, and from Casablanca to Agadir, you arrive in, let's say, 2 hours. You're happy, but you're not happy when you see that the police doesn't work properly. You're not happy when you see that the hospital doesn't work properly. You're not happy when you see that if there is a road accident, if there is negligence on the part of the driver, negligence on the part of the company, you cannot take them to task, meaning you cannot make them face the law, the wrath of the law. When you see that people die and there is no compensation, there's no one to answer. That means a thug, a group of people who control the transport business, are the bosses. From there, the Gen Z starts to lose their patience. And I am telling you, in a final analysis, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, there'll be many academic work. What is happening now, they're going to get refined and they'll be published. It will come in front of the world, and you'll see that today, what I am telling you, the truth shall come out. From there, it started. Because,
From 2018,
yes, from
because of the
2000,
safety
absolutely,
of the
from
highways.
because
So,
our government,
so
our
it's a small demand. That's how
no, no,
it's.
it's a no. In perspective of Bangladesh and India, it's not a small demand. It's a very big demand, because there is a culture of thuggery that prevails in the country due to lack of democracy over the last 50 years. There are a lot of, according to Antonio Gramsci, I know I'm sure
Of
you know
course.
of him, the social
Yeah.
scientist of Italy. According to his theory of hegemony, there are a lot of hegemony that has been strengthening itself, rather weaponizing would be the correct word, themselves, taking advantage of the fact that true democracy does not prevail in these societies that we are talking about right now.
Mm.
So there is a hegemony of transport drivers, there is a hegemony of transport owners, there is a hegemony of police officers. My God, what hegemony of police officers?
Would you
They
call it
have,
intermediaries?
I'm sorry?
Would you call these people intermediaries?
Yes,
Intermediate people?
No, I would not use such a civil word. I would say they are modern day thugs in a disguise of being a bargaining agent. Do you understand? Like,
Bugs,
there's
yeah.
a CBA in the labor movement, so they're more like a bargaining agent, but they are not bargaining in the favor of overall welfare for a nation. They are bargaining for the people who belong to their flock. So, as far as Gen Z is concerned, Gen Z do not really like this. Gen Z wants to see that the fundamental rights that have been promised by a constitution, by the state, it prevails. So whether he is having food in a five-star hotel or not doesn't matter for him, but he wants to see that the stipend, the staple, the food that he's getting, it is not adulterated. There
Yeah.
is nothing that would cause cancer, that there is nothing that would kill him. He
Mm.
or she wants to feel that the education that they're getting, that will actually ensure them to captivate future, and they can utilize, or you can use the word exploit, their potentials, so that they can have a beautiful life. Now, in the case of Morocco, in the case of Bangladesh, in the case of Pakistan, in the case of India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, everywhere, it is a reality. I love your country. I've been to your country many times, Hafid, and we have been long time friends. It has so much potential. If you come to Bangladesh, you'll see it has so much potential. Yet, it is a fact that my country has been independent for 54 years. You really cannot claim that you can go into a hospital and get world class medical treatment. Of
Mm.
course, if I am a part of the executive, the government, then I would say no, 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 we are very good. But no, I'm a politician.
So
I
about
have
that,
not sold my soul to anyone. I have to tell
about
the
that,
truth.
Rahman, I just want to. You were a leader. I mean, not front leader, but one of the leaders of
No, I
Awami
was the
League.
front leader, but I was not part of the government. I
Yeah,
was
you were
solely
not
part
part
of
of
the
the. So
political
you were
party.
front leader of the Awami League, but not
Yes.
in the government.
Absolutely, absolutely. I
That's
was there on a regular basis on television channels
yeah.
and
I
on the
remember. I
social
remember.
media,
Yeah.
but my position was very different. Today, like, I am persecuted because of few corrupt individuals who were there in the government
So
and
two
also
things.
within the vicinity of the government.
Right.
Our job. as you said, that Awami League was the party which made Bangladesh independent. My job was to talk about that, because our great leader, our father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman,
Yeah.
he led this country to independence, fighting a war against Pakistan, keeping four values up front. One is secularism, number is social justice, number three, socialism, number four, socialism and democracy, and number four was the values of the independence war that we dearly fought for,
Yeah.
so that human life is preserved,
Yeah.
human dignity is preserved,
So,
and we
so
can
please.
set an example in front of the world.
Yes. So how
So,
come? How come the police shot the demonstrators? There were
yes, I'm
hundreds
coming
of.
to that.
So
So,
what
as
happened?
a,
I wanted. So if you can tell us from
yes,
inside, what
I,
happened?
I'm telling you. So, as a political leader, this was our job, to continuously try to educate the mass, including the Gen Z, that why Bangladesh became independent and what is our endeavor, right? So the four pillars of independence that I talked about, you can find similarity with European countries, you can find same similarity with USA, and we are great preachers of freedom of speech, freedom to worship, as Franklin Delano Roosevelt in his four freedom speech he delivered, that freedom to worship, freedom from fear, freedom from want, and freedom of speech, right? So we advocate those things. Unfortunately, when a political party is in power for a long time, the idea of check and balance, the idea of being able to regulate itself and remain altruistic becomes a very difficult proposition. So, from there, a part of the administration was actually abusing the law and order forces in such a way where this incident that you are discussing, it happened. We cannot say it did not happen, and we can never say that Gen Z was on the wrong side. But yes, what we can say, that the revolution of the Gen Z was without any form, was without any structure. As a result, although Sheikh Hasina has left the country, she is now in Delhi, India, although Awami League is not in power, and the followers, workers, and the leaders of Awami League are being continuously persecuted, lynched, killed in broad daylight in Bangladesh,
Wow.
but the aspiration which drove this revolution, I must say, it is far from being achieved. Because I'm sure you remember once we met in a, how would I say, quasi formal environment in Casablanca, and I told you that, Hafid, before choosing a new system, you must know who is going to lead the system. So, if you take Egypt into consideration, it's not too far away. After the Arab Spring, when Hosni Mubarak was dismantled from power, they choose Muslim Brotherhood. So their leader was Mursi. But people of Egypt didn't know. They did not have enough
You
time
have
for
no
thinking
idea
about.
of Morsi or Muslim Brotherhoods, of
Right.
course.
What they did not know. So what it means, that if you shall see that you're nearing an expiry date of your political proposition, then from the love towards your country and people, from patriotic perspective, you must allow alternate political forces to grow and to become well known to your countrymen, so that even in your absence, they cannot cause harm to the people. Even in your absence, they can provide stability. Today, the problem is there was a revolution. That's it. And the revolution is just there. It is not achieving anything. I can guarantee you they will not achieve anything in Nepal. They will not achieve in Bangladesh. And even other countries where the Gen Z is making a movement, I salute their aspirations. Mark my word, there should not be any confusion. I salute their aspirations. But I'm also telling you with responsibility that the culmination of the reality shall not be very
Okay.
pleasant and sweet.
Thank
I,
you, Rahman.
I think
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I just want
Go
to
ahead.
make a note of that point. I actually think, as you were talking about Bangladesh, maybe the United States, and particularly the Trump administration, should take a lesson from Bangladesh. Something you said, I think, really speaks to what is happening now in America, which is why we have the protests tomorrow. Right now, Republicans control every bit of government, Congress, and the White House. There's a majority on the Supreme Court. And so what's happened is they have neglected the checks and balances. And as you mentioned, with political parties, political movements that forget that they have to be responsive to the people, we're starting to see the frustration here because of what you mentioned. Like, I'll give you an example. By November 1st, most healthcare insurance premiums will skyrocket, including my own. It's going to go from $660 a month probably to $850 a month. That's going to be a lot for young people who are still on their parents' plan, for example. And so they're frustrated that Donald Trump is deciding to send $20 billion in aid to Argentina for his buddy without congressional approval, without asking the United States, yet is not doing anything on that end. And I think that when you have a government that is not being responsive to the people, you get that tension. And so I think that's a lesson that the Trump administration could learn from Bangladesh. It's not that there is opposition against helping Argentina. I personally don't want to, but I'm just one American. I think there is opposition to one man deciding that, especially when there are priorities that greatly affect young people like healthcare.
Like, with all humility, I would like to press on to my argument in this way, that not that I'm very familiar with the No King movement, but ignoring the checks and balances of United States of America is one thing,
Mhm.
and breaching the checks and balances of United States of America is another thing. So as far as law, legality, and constitution is concerned, Honorable President Donald Trump has not breached, neither violated a single checks and balances of United States of America.
Yes, he has,
So
and I'll
if
tell
you're a
you why.
true champion of
I,
democracy,
Well,
yeah.
I just want to
Oh,
correct
okay.
one thing you said.
You get to tell me.
Yeah, just the point to correct. I get what you're saying, that there's respect for the checks and balances, and then there's breaching them. In the beginning of the second term, we didn't see respect, but now we're seeing breaches. For example, the Constitution doesn't give the president the power to impose tariffs, but the Congress, the check and
No,
balance, isn't stopping Donald Trump.
no.
Secondly, Donald Trump paid our soldiers 2 days ago because it's the 15th of October, 15th of the month. We're in a government shutdown. He didn't have the money to do that. He is supposed to notify Congress before he changes any appropriations. Even the Republican senators this morning said, "Where's the notification?" Donald Trump ignored it. So the reason we're having a protest is he went from not respecting the checks and balances to breaching them. And I think that that's the path that we're on, and that's
You
the reason
see,
behind the protest.
you
Okay, just
see,
a second, just to put
just
some context
just
to the
to
new viewers joining us. We are talking about the demonstrations tomorrow that
eh,
are expected to take place in America. That's why we have derived on this topic of
yeah,
Donald
just
Trump.
to
Carry on,
just to
Rahman.
yeah, just to agree and not to agree with you. Trump can impose tariff on other countries, whether it's legal or illegal. That will be refuted by the courts, and already the Supreme Court of the United States of America has given their verdict on certain tariff imposition. So my point was, there is check and balance. Even if the President of the United States of America does something in order to rectify or in order to go back, there are institutions which have not been dismantled. This is number one. Number two, if the shutdown is imposed on, if it is a conscious decision to embarrass the executive, then perhaps there are safety nets, how would I say, mechanisms by which they can carry on. Because as you're saying, Mr. Kevin, that if the payment to the soldiers stop, do you really want that, even as a Democrat or as anybody? Because United States of America is a country which requires constant defense provided by its army, navy, marines, and air force men, personnel. So you cannot compromise on that just because few people in the Congress or in the Senate has devised a way where you can molest the president's hand into a situation where there is a government shutdown. So it is the
Hold on,
president
hold
of the
on.
United States of America's number one primary responsibility to make sure that whether everything works or not, at least the defense aspect of United States of America remains intact, operational, active. And also, as far as the financial aid that you are talking about to Argentina,
Mhm.
without knowing much, I'm just saying that during Biden administration, the list of aid came out from which country was given how much money. And out of that, I must mention one. I hope you guys don't misunderstand me, but it is a reality that $22 million was given to the Gaza people for buying condoms, contraceptives. A
No, they
place
weren't.
No,
where every
this
day,
was declined. It's a fake
Yeah.
yeah,
news.
it was declined by Trump, yes, but
No,
it
no,
was
Yeah.
no,
offered.
no, no, no,
That's
no,
what I'm
no.
saying. It was offered. I'm just saying. I'm just
No, it
saying.
wasn't offered. It wasn't offered. Just to correct you on that
No,
point.
no,
Okay.
the
The
Gaza province in Zimbabwe, in
right,
Mozambique. Sorry,
Okay,
right.
there is
No, no, no.
there is a
even
province.
then, even then,
What
he
happened
came up
was
with a published list of long
right,
reasons for
and
which these
and
aids were given.
they were
In
debunked.
Bangladesh,
There's
he provided about $39 million to promote democracy, Mr. Biden.
right.
And as a result, today there are about 4 to 5 thousand people dead due to mob lynching. So the
Mhm.
government became destabilized. Now the jurisprudence behind these expenditure can be questioned. So that's the whole
Mhm.
point. That if
Hold on,
you
but yeah,
can
I want to
question,
answer your question that you
please,
asked.
please.
First of all, um, I totally agree that the defense has to be continued. I don't think that I don't think it's safe for America to not have that continuous. However, it is not Donald Trump to decide that on his own. We have a system. And unfortunately for Donald Trump, if Congress isn't allowing him to do what he wants, he can't just decide what's best for our
No,
country.
that is not correct.
That is a king. And you know what? In some countries that wouldn't make sense, but
That's
I'm
not correct.
speaking as
Yeah.
American. He doesn't get to say they're not doing their job, so I'm going to decide everything. That's the first part.
No.
Second part is here's the big difference between the projects you mentioned with Biden and Trump. Let's say, for example, there were condoms, $100 million of condoms. That money, Joe Biden asked the US Congress for money for his projects. Congress passed a budget and said, you can spend this money. And he did. Now, was it the best way to spend it? Maybe that's why Kamala Harris lost. We don't know. The difference with Donald Trump, he did not ask not one single American, is it important now for us to spend $20 billion for Argentina? So once again, this isn't about the particular policy, the amount of money. It's the fact that we don't have a king in America. And I don't care how emergency the situation is. One person shouldn't just be able to decide that for America. That's what's
Calvin,
underlying the protest.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry, I
Calvin,
just have to
I
again.
understand what you're trying to
Sorry,
say, but the
Rahman, just
problem
to
is,
precise for the audience, just for some sensitivity of Moroccan audience. Kings just don't decide that way. Even in Morocco, we are a kingdom, we have institutions, and the king is tied to these institutions, so a constitution. I think the No King protest refers to the original war that created America. And I'm sure you agree with me, Calvin, where the original American settlers revolted against the king in London for behaving with them not like citizens, not like English citizens, and imposing
Right.
them abusive taxes. So that's why now there is this called No King protest. But in Morocco, again, we are a monarchy and we have free speech, as you can notice. But I can't just sorry, Calvin, just for that. Really apologize, but just let you say that the king behaves and says and does whatever he wants. This maybe refers to these
Right.
absolute kings in the 18th century during the American Independence War, but doesn't refer
Right.
at all to any monarchy in the world because most of the monarchies are constitutional monarchies, including Gulf
Mhm.
countries, and
Mhm.
the kings are tied to institutions and they can't just decide whatever they want.
Yeah.
This was just too precise for
Right.
the
And
Moroccan.
let me
Yeah,
clarify. I have not heard any American ever. We're thinking about a king, as you said, from Great Britain. Because
yeah.
think about it. I have not seen one person even connect this, say, Morocco. Or think about it. Donald Trump was just with King Charles in England. We separate that out. This is a completely American thing.
Domestic
Right. Exactly. Mhm.
words. Yeah. The wording is American.
Right, right.
No, but what Kevin is saying, it's a I would bring in an example. In Bangladesh, for which the Gen Z actually participated in this revolution, another reason that is there were great allegations that few people were siphoning out banks, meaning they were coming up with huge loans from the banks using fictitious name, fictitious companies, which
So
did not
this
have.
was in Bangladesh.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So the allegation was as such that about $100 billion was siphoned out of the country over the last 15, 16 years by few people utilizing massive abuse of power and authority. So
What was it true?
when well, I'm coming to that. So when we got into the investigation, right now the investigations are taking place. Everywhere it seems that they have followed all the system. That means whoever was the chairman of the bank, he had a board, he called a board meeting, all the board members agreed to give this fictitious loan, then all the credit check committee, all the credit risk management committee, they were all aligned. So as far as the paperwork, the system is concerned, it is absolutely correct. But reality is that you are bringing in a tea stall owner who is not even worth maybe $500, but you are sanctioning a loan of $100 million in his name. Then once the money is put in his account from there, it is flying to Singapore. It is being moved to USA. It's being moved to United Kingdom, and so forth. So this has happened over the last 15 years for about $100 billion. Now, what is the relevance between Kevin's delivery, Trump's situation, Congress and Senate? Yes, just because the Congress and Senate has given an allocation of budget to Biden, it doesn't mean that with that allocation, Biden is going to do something which is not necessary. Number one, and you
Hold on,
must
but he
no.
decides if it's necessary.
If you,
Not
if you let me finish, that is,
yeah.
then you get to make your point.
Mhm.
And at the beginning of this program, I said that charismatic leadership, these are very important things to take into account. Like, not that I support the Russia Ukraine war, I don't want people to die, I'm not a supporter of violence. But at the end of the day, if you look at it in this way, that Russia already took over a part of Ukraine, which is known as Crimea. That means when Crimea was under the clutches of Russia, that means the war state was already continuing, it existed. There was a war zone. So while a war is going on over the area called Crimea, why would President Biden go and offer membership of NATO to a country like Ukraine?
Yeah,
I'm
but
not
sorry.
saying I'm not saying what Russia is doing is correct. I'm not saying what Ukraine is doing is correct.
Mhm.
All I'm saying that to welcome someone just for a political rhetoric, you don't need permission from the Congress, you don't need permission from the Senate. But people from outside, Rasheq Rahman per se is not in America. From outside, he perceives. So the perception changes. So what I'm trying to tell you that not always collective decision is correct and judicious. So the president of United States of America, whether it be Donald Trump, whether it be Ronald Reagan, whether it be Jimmy Carter, whether it be Barack Obama, hardly matters. World perceives him as the most powerful person in the whole world. So, as an individual, and sure, it is a teamwork, but mind you, within a bigger team, as in mathematics we have studied set, within the set A, there is subset B, there is subset C. That means the President of the United States of America has its own administration, has its own team, and if he or she see that danger is imminent for the United States of America, he does not have the luxury of waiting for somebody's approval. Now, you may ask why? The answer is very simple. Congress is a collectively elected body. Senate is a collectively elected body, which means somebody from Arkansas is being elected, somebody from New York is being elected, somebody from Hawaii is being elected, and then there is a horizontal summation of the winnings. How many Democrat, how many Republican, or how many independent?
Yes.
But president is unilaterally elected. So the role of that leadership, the focus and the focal points of that leader, the preferences of that leadership is no matter how many sentences you write in the constitution, it is very different and it is of a different height. So my eventual point is that which we are suffering in Bangladesh also. Like now, my
Okay.
party is in exile, and we are saying the same thing. We're only talking about existing constitution, but people are the constitution. It's not the book. It's not the law. What people demand, what people require by majority, is the constitution. Perhaps Donald Trump realizes what people need, the majority of the people. Maybe uh, other people understand. I'm no one to judge that. All I am trying to say that as I look at America, America has a very undemocratic role to play in the world. Why? Somehow your dollar is the king currency. King, the word king currency.
Mhm.
Somehow your economy
Yes.
is the king economy.
Yes.
So your number one man, whether he likes it or not, he is like a king to the world.
Oh, well, so
Okay, I'm trying.
let me just respond really
Before
quickly.
I'll give you
Oh,
the
yeah.
floor, Calvin. One second,
Okay.
because I have also a question to say.
Hmm.
Please, let's not divert from the topic. But
Right.
yes, of course, we are talking about side topics that are relevant to the
Right.
main topic,
Totally.
but we have to deal with the main topic. And you were talking about a dollar being the king currency and America being the
Yes.
first superpower.
Yes.
Now,
Hmm.
before you reply to Rasheq, I want you also to reply to me, Calvin. There are
Hmm.
some voices here in Morocco that point directly America as behind these demonstrations that shook Morocco. And there is an analysis developed by a guy called uh, um, Aberkan, Idriss Aberkan. He's
Hmm.
uh, uh, a French analyst in international relations,
Hmm.
and he said that awkwardly, many countries, whether it is Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or um, now Madagascar or Peru recently has been struck by Gen Z protests, or now Morocco. These
Hmm.
countries are developing increasing ties, economic ties with China, and
Hmm.
are giving space for Chinese industry to get full deployment abroad. So, do you think these protests are coming from, as it is said in French, une officine? It means a small office bureau within the American intelligence
Hmm.
for some purpose, not necessarily related to the White House, but for some purpose to destabilize countries and ultimately reach China and Chinese industry. Do you think this could be? There are some people who say this. Do you think they are right in thinking that way?
I think that they are right in that America could, America has throughout the past, has interfered in a lot of covert ways around the world. So America has the ability to do it. There's nothing against American. There's nothing morally or principally keeping America from doing it. However, I don't think they are, just because our government right now is not that strategic. And I don't mean necessarily the Trump administration. I mean, I would say since 9/11. Like, think about it. The reason the attacks of September 11th happened was because the CIA wasn't talking to the FBI, wasn't talking to the National Security Administration, wasn't talking to the
Lack
other
of
police
coordination.
forces. Lack of coordination, right. We have the Department of Homeland Security now because of September 11th, because we then decided, wow, we need to put everybody in the same room. Okay. So I don't think it's happening, not because America wouldn't do it, but just because I don't think that we're strategic enough now to do it. I also, in the case of Morocco, um, the reaction that I've heard a lot, after the protest was Morocco is really an example of stability to America and is a stable American partner on many levels. Like, there aren't many countries that have that kind of a relationship with the United States. So I don't know of any American lawmaker from any party who would see any value in destabilizing Morocco. Now, are there things being done now to weaken China, to change what China's trying to do with a lot of countries around the world? Probably so. I don't know if they're being effective or not, but uh, I don't think there's a huge official campaign for it. One just quick point too. We were talking about our American system, and I think this relates to this Gen Z question. Um, I definitely understand as an American who lives outside of America a lot how our system is perceived. But I think in this time, people need to understand how America is. The president is not the most powerful person in this country. Our Constitution is built that the Congress is the most important branch because it is the representatives. Let's remember that in the Constitution, the Congress can get rid of the president. President can't get rid of the Congress. And I know that Donald Trump wants to rule without seeking Congress's help. I think honestly, maybe there are times when dealing with Congress slows things down and it's not as efficient. But guess what? We're in a democracy here. I honestly know that Donald Trump is probably frustrated that he cannot execute his budget the way he wants to as president. I would say tough luck because we're in a democracy where, yes, you actually have to ask Congress for permission for every dollar. And so the question becomes, well, what if he makes bad decisions? What if Biden made bad decisions? And I believe Biden made several that I don't agree with. Our solution in democracy is when the elections come, guess what? They won't be president again, or their party won't be president.
Correct.
So we don't have an emergency democracy in America where if people can't get along, then the president can just unilaterally decide things. The US president cannot spend $1 of Calvin's tax money until he checks with Congress. If he does, I don't care if it's an emergency, he's breaking the law. And so I think that's something that I want to make sure that the world understands about our system.
Yeah, because we're having a debate about whether yes or not Donald Trump broke the law, and Calvin, you state
Oh,
that.
and I just want to say, sorry, the link to that, to our discussion, which I think is important, is that's why the Gen Z protest, or the Gen Z element of the protest in America, aren't so much over one particular issue. Because like I said, for some it may be healthcare, for some it may be student loans, for some it may be our crime problem, for some it may be immigration. That's not what's motivating the protest. What's motivating the protest is America is not used to living under a leader who wants to lead without consulting Congress. And that is why it is the No Kings protest. So I think if we compare the Gen Z movements in the United States with the world,
Tomorrow,
we have to remember that part of what a lot of Gen Zs don't agree with is the decisions are being made without their input or without other Americans' input. That's the unifying theme of the protest tomorrow.
Kevin,
And that might be different, yeah.
I
And
want to
so
learn.
sorry,
I
sorry,
want to
hold on,
learn.
hold on, Rahman, just a precision. It's not the only country. Today, Madagascar elected or appointed a new president after the former president left the country in a French airplane, definitely, apparently. So prior to this, the Malgache Assembly in Tananarivo, the capital of Madagascar, have voted against the president. So, of course, it's not the case only of the United States. And I want you, please, to focus on this generational aspect. What makes different this new Gen Z, different the generation compared just to the 2011 upheaval, the Arab Spring, compared to what happened in the 90s in the former Eastern countries, Eastern Soviet bloc countries in Europe, compared to what happened, for example, before in other revolutions. Iran witnessed in a revolution in 1979. Several other countries witnessed many revolutions. What is the main difference now with this Gen Z? I have a start of answer, and then I'll give you the floor, Rahman. Maybe this is the first generation that is being asked by the adults, by the parents, how this small tool is going to work. And sorry for the apple. Maybe I shouldn't show it, but I know that millions who are watching us might complain.
Nobody's paying you
So,
for showing the apple, so don't show it.
yeah,
Mhm,
of course.
mhm.
Yeah.
But this first
So
generation where adults come to ask the younger how it
you see,
works. and it is a dramatic shift in psychology, at least.
The entire paradigm of politics have shifted. And without using the word parent, I would say the previous generation has failed to realize how the social media and this handheld device impacts our Gen Z. So, as I told you, that Gen Z has a very non classical approach. They would not protest for many apparent things for which previously our ancestors have protested. They would protest for things which are immediate
Exact,
responsibility of the state and the government.
exact,
And believe you me, a Gen Z will not come and say, "Give me a job, I don't have a job." They don't work like that. But Gen Z would definitely complain to you about education system, which doesn't help him to get a job or her a good job. A Gen Z will not come and say that, "Hey, work out for me on behalf of me. I want to remain healthy." He will not say that. He or she will say that I want to walk into a public hospital, a general hospital, and I want to get state of the art, most modern healthcare without questioning or without any impediment, right? So these are small things they want. They don't want much. And as far as Kevin is saying that I am a true believer of democracy, whether it be in United States of America or whether it be in Bangladesh, the world itself moves in a very democratic fashion. So in small factions, small places, different kind of system may be there, but in eventuality, the progress and the continuation of this world will actually depend on our collective decisions. So taking into global warming into account, taking the depletion of resources that is taking place, all this pollution that is taking place, all the war that is taking place, or for that matter, according to Aporto Sen, the lack of entitlement for which we grow so much grain, food crop, yet there is a part of this world who don't get food properly. There is
yes,
famine still now, right? So it
800
is our
million.
collective decision. But what I want to ask that when you are making a king movement, the people who are assigned to make the king, that means tomorrow, can Kevin tell me how many elected congressmen and elected senator are going to take part in that procession? So if a sizable number of congressmen or senators do not take part in those protests, you really cannot call them absolutely democratic. They are democratic somewhat, but it does not reflect the actual opinion and support of United States of America. So what I'm saying that being able to protest is a democratic thing, but just because we are being able to protest, if we say that we are only correct and they are not correct, perhaps that is not always right. And one thing we have seen in the United States of America, one thing we have seen in the United Kingdom, that is the aspect of floor crossing. That means even a congressman who belongs to the Republican Party, if he or she feels that Donald Trump is not on the right side, they can cross. They can vote against whatever he wants. They can voice their opinion. That is the greatest form of democracy, which we did not have. In Bangladesh constitution, still now there is Article 70 and 71, where a member of parliament cannot raise his voice against anything that he feels is not correct against the government. He will lose his member of parliamentship. This is not there in United Kingdom. But in Morocco, it is there. In Morocco, a member of parliament or the member of the legislative body cannot make an official statement going against,
No,
you
no,
know,
it is
what I
possible.
mean.
No, no,
No,
it
not
is
against the
possible in Morocco. You had a
not against the monarch. They cannot make a
sorry.
statement against the monarch.
No,
They
no
cannot make
one.
a statement.
Sorry, no one will make statement against the monarch for a simple reason.
No, I'm
Uh,
just saying. It's an
that
example.
doesn't
I
mean
mean,
it's a limit to free speech. It's just
right,
respect
exactly.
because there is a
But
symbolic behind the
yes,
monarch.
but in USA there is no limit. That's what I was saying. That was the example. In
Yes, I was.
England,
Yeah, just
in
gonna.
England, you can stand in the parliament and talk against the monarch, the king of England. No problem. They will not
Yes,
like it.
just.
The
Oh no.
loyalists will not like it. They will protest, but you can. So, what I'm saying is that democracy itself is a difficult proposition, but for that, one must own the sense of justice and fairness in him or her. It's not only the book called Constitution, it's only, or not only the set of law. Any democratic process which does not stand beside justice, Any democratic process which does not stand beside human values is not democracy at all. Democratic system is one thing, democracy is another thing. Abraham Lincoln's Civil War from 1861 to 1865, it was a war, but it championed democracy
Yes, true.
because it was trying to defend and uphold the right of the people who did not have the right. It
Mhm.
tried to ensure emancipation of the belief that the forefathers of the United States of America had. Similarly, we had a war against Pakistan in 1971 under the leadership
Yes.
of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
Mhm.
3 million martyrs gave their lives against the oppressive military forces and the paramilitary forces, which are known as Razakar al Badr al Shams of Pakistan in 1971, 26 March to 16 December. But it was an act of war, but it was champion of democracy. Whether it was democratic, yes, we can give a lot of examples. Many people may refute, many people may agree, may not agree. But
Mhm.
the end result of that act is that we champion humanity, we champion
I think you
mankind.
agree, Calvin, I guess.
Uh, yeah, just and I want to address your point on the democracy point. Just to be honest, in America, that's not. We have a democracy that is only on paper. Our law, our system of rule of law, is what's on the actual paper of the Constitution,
No,
nothing more. It's not the
no,
paper and then what Calvin feels in his heart. It's not the
no,
paper and what Donald Trump feels is best for
no, sir.
America.
No, that's
And I know that there are principles that we want to expound to, but in a democracy, you have to follow the paper. And then so tomorrow, if there's a huge uprising against Donald Trump, is he going to be kicked out of office? No, because in our system, you can't get kicked out if people are mad. You get
No.
kicked out if an election happens or if Congress has it. So I think it's safe and a
Kevin,
democracy in America works because it is just on the paper, not somebody's ideals, because those are different.
Kelvin,
But to answer the question about the age, I just want to say one thing that I disagree with both of you. I don't think that this is any different with Gen Z from any other generation. I
yeah.
think there's different technology, definitely. And I think technology changes the way people express themselves. I think that there are different ways of approaching problems. Like you mentioned with the attention span and not sitting, listen to a 60-minute speech. Totally agree. And I think that's specific to Gen Z. But I don't think the phenomenon of the kids speaking to the parent, telling them what's going on. That's happened all the time. It just wasn't with social media. It happened in the 80s with TV. That's how people got together. It happened in the Vietnam War in the 70s. It
Yeah,
was the young people telling Richard Nixon's generation,
yeah.
we don't want to fight this war against communism. In the
Mhm.
50s and 60s, in the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King was only in his early 30s when he was assassinated. He was very young. So I think, at least in America, it's always been the young telling the old, hey, we need to change things. I think the
Yeah.
difference with Gen Z is they just have a new tool, but I don't think it's specific to them.
Maybe, probably,
So,
there is also the age of the world leaders. Let's say it clearly, there is a generational clash.
no,
Keep in mind
also,
that, so sorry, Rahman, really few seconds. Keep in mind that two elections or one. If you remember 2021, people were complaining about the age of the American candidates. Trump was 76 and Biden was 78. And
All right.
now Trump is 79 and Biden was 82 the first half of the campaign. You remember, up until
Right.
late July, where when
Mhm.
Kamala took in charge. So definitely, and the biggest fortunes in the world, Warren Buffett is 95, George Soros is 95. Big fortunes, big decision makers are too old for this new generation. They are too old
Yeah.
for us already, and most of our generation feel that they are old. And now we got a serious feeling of being even more old with this new generation, recalling us that the Y generation are now the uncles and they're not anymore the youngs in the streets. So yes, there is a generational gap more acute than in the time of Nixon or in during the Cold War, etc. I think that today,
A small point on that, and I looked this up because I was curious. I think there's an age gap with the leaders. I also think America, we're just older. I looked at the median age in America is 39 years old. In Madagascar, it's 19. So, like, part of I think we're different in America because we just happen to be older as a percentage of the population.
So that's before giving you the floor again. So I'm saying twice. I hope you're okay with that. Sorry again. Apologies, Rahman.
Uh-huh.
Rahman, you political leader of Bangladesh, and Calvin, you're a global affairs analyst in Washington. Prior to this generational clash, we had a lot of signs. The most prominent sign, and I think the countries that have this sign should be very careful the next weeks and months, it's the demographic explosion, the demographic growth. Bangladesh was, I think, 40 million in during the independence, and now it's 180 million. So this boom in the births, this new big generation in Bangladesh, probably dozens of million that arrived and was watered by all these news and all these new tools and the digital tools and stuff, etc., was too numerous. And when they went on the street, it was too big. You told me that when you called me on the 1st of October, and you said they start in the neighborhoods, and then with the simple slogans and simple profiles, Gen Z, and then it grows to virus profiles, and then the slogans get more social and more political, and then they head for the downtown. And you said that to me on the phone. Once they
Yes,
are in the downtown, it's game over. So
came over.
yes,
And
the
more,
demographic shift is also a key player in this Gen Z generation. And that's why in Morocco, we were a little bit immune because Morocco conducted a demographic transition that
but
makes
the
Gen Z generation one of the lower in the Arab world. That's why their reach was limited so far because there are demonstrations this weekend as well. But I think it's quite limited now. And I think that when you conduct demographic reforms, you get less Gen Z issues. Carry on now, Rahman.
No, but in case of Bangladesh, it's a little bit different in the sense that Gen Z's movement or the revolution was basically hijacked by those people who never wanted Bangladesh to be independent in the first place. It was hijacked by the people who do not believe in secular politics. It was hijacked by a party which is the charter of the party. The charter of the party does not support democracy directly
Are you
because
talking about the BNP?
no, I'm talking about Jamaat Islami, yes,
The
because
Islamists.
because
Okay.
you're a Muslim, I'm a Muslim, right?
Yes.
So in Islam, there is no clear mention of democracy or, for that matter, any system by which a state should be run.
Yeah.
There is no prescription of political electoral process.
No.
You can select, maybe even you can elect, but there is no formal proposition.
Yeah.
So when a party is talking about eventually attaining Sharia law in a country, that means they are going to get rid of the conventional democratic system with which we are accustomed to. But why did it happen? Because the Gen Z saw, and also we saw, that a vibrant democracy requires regular elections which can be claimed to be transparent and fair. That was not happening. So once that doesn't happen, there is an uprise of frustration, there is a uprise of terrorism, there is a uprise of fundamentalist people, and that's what happened. And like here, as Kevin is saying about the constitution, also in Bangladesh there is a constitution. But what is the safety mechanism? The safety mechanism, just like United States of America, there was a Supreme Court which had a great responsibility to intervene when the intervention was required. Even now in the United States of America, a lot of decisions Kevin may not agree with. I agree. Perhaps you agree, maybe somebody else. But Supreme Court does intervene. It does try to play its historic role, which failed in Bangladesh. Our Supreme Court did not play that historic role. As a result, today this miscarriage of, how would I say this, democracy or whatever you may call it, it has taken place. And as a matter of fact, it is not only bad for us, it is bad for everybody in Bangladesh. So what I'm saying, for the moment, temporarily, you may not like a decision, but if you follow through and if you see that the checks and balances are working, like in United States of America, Kevin's tax money cannot be spent by Donald Trump. That is true. Similarly, the Congress and Senate cannot do something which the president doesn't desire. There is a gridlock. So you have to
Mhm.
sit, you have to agree, and you have to get things done. Maybe there are some occurrences, maybe there are some situations where Kevin is not happy, maybe somebody else is not happy.
Mhm.
Similar situations were there in Bangladesh also. But we are talking about eventuality. Eventually, the checks and balances, the institutions and the persons who hold that, if they don't come out with their own capacity to protest and put foot down, then obviously there'll be a revolution from the Gen Z. And without a structure, you can dismantle the people who are doing wrong, you think, and then you cannot achieve the correct thing. And if you take a very, like the social media you were talking about, how it is playing its role, just think about this. Hitler's or Nazis' final solution. What was that? To annihilate the Jews from the face of this earth. And what was the eventuality? Once you get rid of the Jews, then you get rid of the people who are not Aryans, non-Aryans, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So the final solution was dealing with supremacy of human race, correct?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, now let's say in 1939, if there was uh, handheld devices, mobile phones in everybody's hand, and let's say social media was so vibrant, where from Berlin throughout the entire world up to Burma, to India, Delhi, up to England, London, Birmingham, um, like let's say Iowa, everywhere people would know what final solution is about. Then do you think this second world war would have taken place? Do you think there would be a Pearl Harbor? Do you think so many millions of people would have given their
Who
lives in
knows? Who
Auschwitz?
knows?
It wouldn't have
Who knows?
happened, right?
Oh, I
So
no, actually, just on that quick point, I hope it wouldn't, but I can honestly say it might have. Look,
no,
we
it might
saw,
not have happened. I
but hold
must
on, but
tell
look,
you, it might not have happened
in Gaza, for example,
because
Yeah.
you have to. No,
for
no,
two
no.
years,
Gaza,
we saw Gaza,
Kevin,
like, yeah,
Kevin.
but that
Ga-
we saw it. What I'm saying.
No, Gaza, Kevin, Gaza would not happen in the first place if in 1947 there was well spread social media established in this world. People did not know what was happening. And believe
Oh
you me,
no, what I'm saying
that,
is that
that
that happened in
Now
Gaza,
they know.
now
right?
they know. So
That
already it
happened
is
in.
pretty late. Already it is pretty late. So you need to
Mm.
recover, right? And
No,
also, I tell
I was
you,
just saying to your point, if that would have happened in World War II, I think it might have, because for 2 years we saw those images on
okay.
social media and videos, and we still didn't stop it. So I'm just saying, I don't know.
And
But
Yeah.
Rahman, you said
I
something
try
very
to
interesting. Hold
change the
on,
perspective a little bit.
Rahman. You
Yeah.
mentioned something. I want to come back to it. You said that somehow behind the Gen Z, you saw the Islamist.
Yes, absolutely. They hijacked the revolution.
Okay. Do you
Totally.
think there are those who have ignited the revolution, but they hide it?
Yes. Yes, they have provided resources, they have provided support.
So
Surely we
you
are to
think
be
in
blamed
Morocco they
also.
would
We
be?
did not
You think?
we did not manage the situation. Surely. We are to be you can I will not sit here and irresponsibly blame the whole thing onto somebody else. The fact remains that in the entire world, the political paradigm has shifted. The definition of charisma has shifted. The
So
definition of well-being
if
has
it has
shifted.
shifted, how
So
comes Islamists who are not renowned for being modern and for being cutting
you
edge,
see,
how
when you're
comes
not
there
in
are those who hijack a revolution?
yes,
How
when you're
comes?
not in power, when you don't have direct responsibility, it is very easy for you to woo a generation. You can promise many things. It is now when the game has started. Once the revolution has started, now they're failing. They cannot give what
Uh,
they have promised.
you said that because the elections before were not fair and free, that
Exactly. Yes,
that
absolutely. And
enhanced the
for that,
frustration.
I'm criticized by my own political party. But
Okay,
I'm telling you,
You
It
said
was
that. So
not idle.
this led to frustration within the masses, I would
Absolutely.
say.
Yes. Yes.
This
It did.
frustration was exploited by the Islamists.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
And their
So
allies, which is BNP.
ultimately those who really ignited it in a second hand or in indirect way is those who never organized fair and free elections.
See, Hafid, absolutely, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. If Awami League had practiced free and fair election, then perhaps once Awami League would be in power, another time maybe BNP would have been power. But mind you, both the parties' foundation is on the independence war of Bangladesh. Why? Because my father of the nation, his party was Awami League, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. On the other hand, Major General Ziaur Rahman, the founder of BNP, was a freedom fighter also. So we both enshrine the same values. So if there was a vibrant political system continuing with the election, free and fair election, then what would have happened? Maybe once Awami League governs, maybe once BNP governs, but at least the country doesn't go to the Islamic fundamentalists. Yes, Jamaati Islami's rise took place when BNP was in power from 2001 to 2006. But just because that happened, it doesn't mean that you will stop having the dialogue, you will stop having the relationship with a progressive force with which you have to ultimately face these terror mongers. So we stopped that process. We stopped doing politics. Politics is a continuous process. We more focused on development. That's what I'm saying. That even if you don't make a bridge, even if you don't make a road, even if you don't have a iPhone 17, you don't go for a protest. You go for a protest when you see that the policeman does not listen to your just call. You protest when you see that your ailment does not get the health care that it deserves. You protest when you see that your future is not getting the nursing that is required from a school, from a college, from a university. And you also see that your country is continuously being siphoned of its wealth.
Yeah.
So all these things put together, this thing
Nourishing
happened.
frustration.
And today I predict one thing to you. I'm predicting one thing to you. Not a single country of this world shall remain free from the Gen Z revolution. Why? Because there are a lot of degradations that are taking place, not only social or political, which we are not concentrating on stopping. If you think about the electric car revolution that is taking place, you're not thinking about the extraction of cobalt all over the world, which is actually creating an imbalance in the mineral uh, equilibrium of the world. The petroleum based cars that we are continuously
Yeah.
producing and is ever expanding,
Yeah.
that also is depleting the mineral that is there.
Of
So
course.
now, if you believe in the purpose of God, then the entire purpose is to maintain balance throughout. So
Yes.
whether it is environment, whether it is minerals, whether it is cobalt, whether it is crude soybean oil, whether it's crude oil, doesn't matter. We have lost the sense of balance. So this is going to happen everywhere until unless the entire world can unite and our predecessors and also us decide that we shall empower and guide the Gen Z so that they stop these degradations from
Yeah.
happening further. If not, if we want to keep the steering in our hand,
Yeah.
and if we continuously think that we are in a conflict with them, then actually in the long run, we are not going anywhere and it will not spare anybody. It's going to touch
Be-
everyone.
because ultimately, of course, you're right, Rahman.
Of course,
They are the
because
future.
because if you read a book of Thomas Kuhn, right, the name is, he wrote it in 1954, I think. The name is uh, Paradigm Shift of Scientific Structures, you know. So like you enter different eras of scientific innovation. If you go through that, you will see that environmental science is nothing new. It was there. Maybe you did not talk about it much. But few people of the world knew about it, the rest did not know, correct? Similarly, the internet was not invented today. The internet was invented in 1970s, but
Yes.
nobody knew about it. The purpose of internet was to have interstellar communication. Today it is an everyday thing. You and me, we are sending emails, we are browsing Google and
We're
all that.
talking now through internet.
So what I'm saying, that if information was disseminated in the same way, the way you can do it today, perhaps we would have a different world. But we are optimistic. Whatever we have now, still now this world is sweet. Still now the world is beautiful. So we gotta act upon it. We gotta move forward. And I hope things change. We can unite and we can bring about a change.
Thank you, Rahman, for mentioning climate change. And yes, I think it was your conclusion word. Are you still with? Yeah, you're still here.
Yes,
Yeah, we
yes.
still have few minutes to go before giving you, Calvin, again, the last word to conclude. And then I'm going to end up the podcast. And maybe if you have a last thing to mention, Rasheq, feel free to do it. Climate change is one
Thank you
of
very
the
much.
yeah, well, climate change is one of the drivers of these demonstrations. Whether yes or not it is a hoax or not, and all information, all scientists now are agreeing that climate change is a reality. The stance of Donald Trump is a problem. Whether yes or not it is a hoax, we have an issue how we behave with the living. And this Gen Z was raised in a world where they were flooded by videos of floods often happening in Bangladesh, for example, or India, of animals extinction, mass extinctions, of oceans being overfished, of wars, of deforestation, of a new disease. Yeah, you still here? Yeah,
Yes.
sorry, of this new disease, and we have 5 minutes to go. So they were raised by this fear, this anguish of future, and they lost trust and confidence in the adults because the adults drove the world in this mad situation. Although you said it, Rahman, it is still a sweet world. Yes, I agree,
It is
but
still a
we have
sweet.
to protect it. We have to protect it. Do you
Yes.
think if we address in a better way the climate change issue? Not like unfortunately United States are doing now. If we dress it in a better way, do you think these Gen Z demonstrations won't generalize in the whole world to stick to this dark prediction of Rahman, which is quite a pessimistic prediction? We don't want the world to become a huge mess. But you said it's gonna spread the world, the Gen Z demonstration. You think, Calvin, if we address in a better way the climate change issues, we will tackle this issue in a more efficient way? The issue of Gen Z demonstrations.
I think so, but on the case of America, before that, we have to just have the before we can address the problem, we have to admit that there is a problem. And Donald Trump says it's a hoax, but it's not just Donald Trump. There are some states in our country where teachers are not allowed to say that there is a climate crisis. And, I said that there are, especially among young men, becoming more conservative. You have a lot of young people who are believing that. And so before we can tackle the problem, we have to recognize it. I do think, just on one kind of point with Gen Z, what motivates them. One thing that does, I think, motivate Gen Z, whether it be climate change or anything else in the United States, is when there is a key, like a central thing that can be clearly expressed, where there is like a consensus that this is wrong. Then you see Gen Z being more active. On climate change, they're divided like our political parties. But the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, that was a large percentage of Gen Z and young people, because racism is easy to understand. Most young people, regardless of whether Democrat or Republican or independent, don't want racism in any form. And so I think that in America, at least, Gen Z will be effective when there are very clear issues that they agree on. And I think once you have that, they will then use those new tools like technology to do unprecedented things in the form of protest. But now, like if you ask Gen Z, some student loans, some healthcare, some crime, some immigration, some climate change. So I think because there's not a big impetus behind
Yeah.
one theme, we're not seeing that in the US like in other countries.
Unlike the impetus that drove the demonstrations in Morocco, education and healthcare. And we're gonna look more closely what's going on for the upcoming weeks, and maybe we're gonna resume this debate and continue it the next Friday or next week's. Let's see.
Just to end it, just give them good education, good healthcare, and show them that you listen to them. And
Thank you very
I
much.
think majority of the problem is contained.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you. Thank you.
your
Take
feedback.
care.
You are a political leader of Bangladesh. You had the first-hand experience with Gen Z demonstrations, and now you live in exile. And thank you for your insights. Rasheq Rahman, political leader of the Awami League and Bangladesh, and Calvin Dark, thank you for your insights as well. Talking
Thank you
to
so
us
much.
from Washington on the brink of vast demonstrations expected tomorrow and on Sunday across America to denounce the rule of Donald Trump. Thank you, everyone, for following us this podcasts of this Yallah Talk podcast dedicated to geopolitics and world news. And follow us for more news on our page. Wait for you the upcoming days for updates. Thank you very much and have a
Thank
good
you. Thank
evening.
you. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye. Bye.
both of you.
Bye. 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 Bye.